Welcome. In tonight's class, class number 6, we begin to look at and address the issue of what is the role of the social worker in working with the resource family. We'll do a mock scenario in which a resource family will be introduced to a social worker who will then begin asking questions about a child in her care. In addition, we will also begin looking at the issue of separation anxiety so that foster parents get an understanding of how separation anxiety in children will affect those children and how those resource families can address and soothe and comfort that child in their care. Thank you. How's everybody doing? Welcome to another class. Today we are going to be talking about two primary topics. Topic number one is going to be how your social worker works with you to address the needs of the child in your care. Second topic that we're going to then focus in on for today's training class is to talk about separation anxiety. So, having said that, I want to first ask, I'm going to ask a favor of you guys. I'm going to pick one of you and we're going to role play. And normally I would bring the person up here and do that, but since you guys are comfortably sitting in your chairs, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to point one of you out, and what we're going to do is role play, and everybody else is going to just listen in. Because what we're going to role play is the relationship that an agency social worker maintains with you as a resource parent. So, I'm going to pick you. I kept seeing you kind of dip your head and look away. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask you to write down some information, okay? And I'm going to give you some information about a child, at which point in time, you and I are going to talk about how we would work together with that child. Because working with a social worker is critical to the work that you will do with that agency social worker in helping to address the needs of that child. So the first thing that I want to say is I'm going to give you some information that you're going to write down because we're going to talk about a particular child that's in your care. So I'm going to imagine that you have a biracial 8-year-old girl placed in your care. Specifically, she is African American and Caucasian. She has been in your home for about 4 months. During that period of time, she has had some behavioral acting out. However, the majority of her particular issues and problems are dealt with pretty much by you. I, however, am a new social worker assigned to her case. We're going to imagine today that she is at school, because we're going to imagine that this is school time, but I showed up to your house to introduce myself to you as well as to get some information about this little girl, okay? And we're going to say her name is Caitlin. And as a result, we're going to acknowledge that Caitlin was placed in your home because of physical abuse, and that Caitlin, in being placed in your home, has no current family involvement and no current visitations. She also has no siblings, okay? What's gonna end up happening for everybody else here, what I want you guys to do is just kind of pay attention to the types of interaction that we have, the types of questions that I ask as a social worker, and I'm gonna ask you, just kind of role play with me and go off the flow of whatever you wanna say, and I'll go around that as well, okay? And what's your name again? Miss Grace?
Griggs. Griggs.
Griggs, Miss Griggs, okay? And for everybody's knowledge, my name is David McCoy, so this is our first meeting. Okay, so I've knocked on your door, you've opened it up. How you doing, Miss Griggs? My name is David McCoy, and I'm a social worker who's calling, or who's going to be working with you with regards to Caitlin. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I've been expecting you to come on in.
Thank you. One of the things as a new social worker that I like to do before I interact with a child is I like to develop a relationship and get to know some information from you as a caregiver, because quite honestly put, you're going to know more about the child than I do. Realistically, you're taking care of the child. I have a file, I have information about her, but at the end of the day, I want to get to know what you know about this particular girl. And so as a result, rather than go see her at school and her not know me from anybody else and just show up saying, hey, I'm a social worker, and start asking her some questions, I really decided I'd show up to your house first and really get information from you about how Caitlin's doing. So do you mind if I ask you some questions?
Sure, go right ahead.
Right off the bat, how's she been in your home?
She's been okay. I've had a couple behavior problems, but nothing that I can handle.
Okay.
She's doing well for the most part.
I heard that when she was first placed that she did have some slight behavior problems. I noticed that she does have by history a history of enuresis. And so as a result, I was just wondering, has she continued to have problems wetting the bed, or has everything continued to be okay with that?
She has had a little bit of problems wetting the bed.
Okay.
I noticed that she's been having some nightmares. I questioned her nightmares and asked her about them a little bit more, and she tells me she's having flashbacks of her mom hitting her, so on and so forth. So I've had documented and emailed the agency and let them know.
Okay.
So this should be in your file. We dealt with the enuresis problem, and it's still an ongoing issue, but we're dealing with it.
Okay, I appreciate that. One of the things that I'm going to ask you is just a bunch of questions about her overall mannerisms, her overall behaviors, as well as some information about her education and things like that. With her being 8 years of age, I'm assuming she's probably in about the second, third grade. How is she doing at school?
She is in the third grade. I have had the teacher call me a couple times just because she's kind of lashed out in class.
Okay.
The teacher and I have had a conference about that. Her and I have had a discussion about that. And I think we've pretty much suppressed that issue.
Okay.
So we've talked about the lashing out in class, and she's getting some counseling services at the school as well.
Okay. Well, typically, if you don't mind me asking, who does she typically lash out, and why? Is it other kids? Is it her teacher? Or is it just anybody and everybody?
It's anybody and everybody.
Does she acknowledge any reasons behind why she does so?
She doesn't.
Does she acknowledge any reasons behind what her thoughts are while she's lashing out?
She says she's angry at her mom.
Okay. Overall, how's her education in terms of her doing her homework and her doing the things that she's supposed to be doing?
Academic-wise, she's doing wonderful.
Okay. Typically, if you don't mind me asking, does she typically get pluses and do her homework without problem, or does she tend to bring homework home and struggle with that?
She does struggle a little bit in math.
Okay.
We have gotten her a tutor in the after-school program, so we're hoping to stabilize the math area, but in every other area, she excels.
Okay. What's the name of the after-school program?
I'm sorry, A Child's Place.
I got you. A Child's Place. How often is she at A Child's Place?
5 days a week.
Okay. How does it start right after school is over?
Immediately after school's over, she goes directly there,
Mhm.
and she's picked up at 6 p.m. every day. So
Okay.
she gets tutoring services in this program.
Okay. Does she like it?
She loves it.
Okay. Does she have friends?
She has friends, yes, she does.
If you don't mind me asking, what's the name of a couple of her best friends?
I know that she has a little Hispanic friend named Liz.
Okay.
She does ask if she can come over and play, and I would rather for the child to come over, but the parents want her to come over there, and I don't see that as appropriate at this time.
Okay, fair enough. And I heard you acknowledge that you said she was in counseling at school. Is she also in counseling outside of school, or just through the school program?
She is in counseling outside of school.
Okay.
She has a once-a-month appointment.
Okay. And is that to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist for medications? Is she on any medications, or is that more just a counselor who's talking to her about whatever concern she has?
It's not a psychiatrist, it's LCSW.
Okay.
So it's just a therapy appointment monthly.
How does she interact during the course of the therapy appointments?
She says that she loves the counselor.
Good.
Absolutely adores her.
Quick question, because I'm kind of getting a sense that she does like certain things. So is there anything that she expresses that she doesn't like?
She doesn't like math. We've
Okay.
talked about that. Gotten her the tutor.
Mhm.
And she doesn't like when I have to go to the doctor's appointment that I'm mandated to take her to.
Mhm.
She doesn't like that at all. She does not like doctor's appointments. She always tells me, my mom never took me to the doctor. I don't see why I have to go.
Okay. Just curious, but in terms of the therapy appointments, you said that she likes going and that she does like talking to the therapist. Have you interacted with the therapist yourself?
I have.
How does the therapist get along with you?
Her
Okay, and I'm assuming if she's only in therapy once a month, she's been doing pretty well then.
Oh yeah, she's stable.
Okay. By any chance, again, I asked, is she on any medications?
No, sir. No.
Have you noticed any particular concerns or problems that might warrant medication management for her?
The only thing, as I mentioned before, is the nightmares.
Okay.
They're quite frequent, and we do address those at the monthly appointments and at the counseling sessions at school.
Okay.
That I share with the counselor at school. I believe she may have a bit of a sleeping problem.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Just because the nightmares are frequent.
Okay.
And the injuries is keeping her up through the night, so then she's scared to go back to sleep.
Okay. Typically, what's the focus of her nightmares, if you don't mind me asking? Do you know?
She's having flashbacks of her mother hitting her.
Okay. I remember I heard you say that early on. I was just curious if when you hear her having night terrors or nightmares, typically is it multiple times throughout the night? I know that you acknowledge that she sometimes has a hard time going back to sleep, but do you notice that even when she eventually does go back to sleep, she's having more, or is it typically that one you soothe her and then she does fine?
It's typically that one. She wakes up in the middle of the night and we talk about it. We have a snack.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of talk with her about it, spend a little time with her,
Mm-hmm.
and then she does kind of lay back down, but she always tells me in the morning, I'm tired,
Mm-hmm.
and she can't get back to sleep. So she lays down. I don't have any other behaviors out of her.
Okay.
But it's evident that she does not go back to sleep in the process.
I got you. Has she ever expressed a desire, even though she's having concerns about her mom or expressing concerns about her mom? Has she ever expressed any desire to have contact with her father or anything like that?
Not at all. She did share with me. She doesn't know who he is.
Okay.
Knows nothing about him. She only lashes out about her mother, and because she is a biracial child, because I'm biracial,
Mhm.
she says that I look like her. So I feel like she gets additional flashbacks.
Gotcha. Does she ever have or take animosity out on you?
Yes.
Okay, in what way?
She just says she doesn't know why her mother doesn't love her and why I care about her so much.
Okay. Just curious, what does she like to do for fun?
Oh, we go to the movies.
Mhm.
I've taken her to Castle Park.
Mm-hmm.
We pretty much do things every weekend. I have another child who's an active athlete.
Okay.
So I tried to introduce her to that. She didn't like that sport, so I told her we can explore the sport.
Okay. How old is your other child?
12.
Okay. And does she get along with her?
She gets along perfectly.
Has she ever expressed any concerns or made any complaints about your daughter or anything like that?
No, she just wished that she liked sports more.
Got you. I got you. Does she at school? Is her friendships as a whole? I noticed that you acknowledged that she has two best friends. Does she tend to not get along with boys as well as more than girls, or does she equally get along with everybody?
Well, there was an incident last school year where she did get in a fight with a little boy.
Okay.
So I had to go to the school.
Okay.
We had to address that issue. She actually got in a full-on fist fight.
Got you.
The little boy knew she was in foster care. I'm not sure how.
Okay.
And so the little boy was teasing her and she lashed out.
I got you. I got you. I'll look into that and talk to her about that. And just curious, but in terms of her overall development, would you say she's on track for her age? Would you say that she's a little bit delayed or slow, or she's more advanced and doing exceptionally well?
I feel that she's doing well. We just have to tackle the math issue because the teacher did say that is a huge area where she's lacking. So we have to have a lot of focus in that area, but in every other area she's excelling and on track.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to let you know, just because of where we're at with the court hearings, the court has located her biological mother. At the same time, the court has also ordered that visitations with her mother do occur. I'm working out the specific arrangements. I do want to ask you up front, though, if the court does order visitations, are you amenable and willing to potentially supervise some of those visits?
Yes, I
Okay, we'll talk more about that because I want to establish with the county and find out the court orders specifically before I put things on you or before you and I start to look into that. But I just want to be upfront with you that that is something that the court is looking at. I'm also expecting, because of the fact that court order is coming in terms of visitations, just be aware and understand that there is a possibility that her behaviors may start to regress. And so all the progress that you're beginning to see now, you might just start to see that diminish. And you also may begin to see her start to have more problems with enuresis, where she starts having more problematic episodes. A lot of times we see that happen. I want to advise you up front that do not be surprised if she starts having visits with her mom, that she's going to potentially start having attitude with you. And unfortunately, the reality is that what she's put into the middle of she's living in your home. She may, on one level, not like her mom right now. On another level, she may want to eventually connect with her mom. And at the same time, she doesn't have the ability to see her mom except under certain conditions. So as a result, all of that animosity, all of those feelings, all of that sadness, all of that anger, it builds up. And so what does she do? She takes it out on the person she's living with, and that is you. Okay? Having said that, overall, medically, she's doing well. No particular concerns?
No concerns other than your enuresis.
Okay.
Talk to the doctor and the counselor.
When's the last time that she had a medical evaluation?
Last month.
Okay. And how about a dental evaluation?
Last month as well, the same day.
Any problems with any of the medical or dentals?
She had a couple cavities that we got filled. Other than that, she didn't have too many dental issues.
So her next appointment, I'm assuming for dental, is probably going to be in like 5 months or so? Okay. And in terms of her Medi-Cal card or her insurance card, you have a copy of that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And in terms, lastly, I'll simply ask this. Just in terms of her whole general behavior and demeanor and all of that, do you like her?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I appreciate that. We're going to stop right there. Okay. Here's the thing that I want to ask all of you. First and foremost, I want to start by asking you questions, and then I'm going to ask everybody here, okay? Overall, what did you find in terms of what I communicated with you? Was the level of question intimidating? Was the level of question something that was just direct, wanting to get information? Did you kind of find that it was a situation where you were being asked 50 million questions? What was your general impression about my communication with you?
That you, like you said, the daily notes and the weekly notes, you don't know what the social worker is going to ask you, so you have to be very knowledgeable in everything regarding that child.
Okay.
So it was very inquisitive, but every right, so this child is in the system, you're going to be asking everything.
Very good.
Blood type, it all.
Observation for all of you guys. I want to kind of point something out to you. Realize and understand, if I were to ask a bunch of questions about a child that is living in your care and has lived in your care for the last 4 months, and you gave me a bunch of answers about, I don't know, go ask her, who knows, how am I going to look at you? Am I going to look at you as, hey, you're on top of your job, or am I going to look at you as, you have no clue about what's going on?
And why are you doing this?
Very much so. This is the thing I want all prospective parents to understand about a social worker, okay? Here's the reality. We are not miracle workers. We are not the people who can make the magic occur with a child in you 24/7. What we can give you is advice, assistance, referrals, and support. Realistically, and I want to be 100% honest with you, my personal philosophy is that you as the resource parent is the main agent for change in making a difference in the lives of these kids, not myself. Any social worker that comes and tells you it is them who are making the progress and making things happen in your home, they're lying to you. You're the one taking care of the child. And the goal of any social worker is that you and that child in your care are bonding well so that that child's growth and development continues to occur. What types of questions? Did you feel that the questions I asked you tended to be very specific and only certain questions, or did they kind of jump all over?
They jumped all over.
Okay.
Medical, school, behaviors at home, all over.
Okay. Here's another thing that I want to point out to all of you guys. As a social worker, we typically come to your home. We typically spend a certain amount of time in your home. And the reality is that we are not there to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner made and coffee ready for us. We are trying to get in, get a good understanding of what is going on in your home, figure out how we can help create and continue that bond. And at the same time, our overall goal is to give you that support and keep things going great. If we can come in and do that, then that means, one, we're happy because you and that child are doing well, and that is our goal. We're also happy because we're getting the information that we need to put in the reports that we have to send off to the different entities that we have reports to send off to. At the same time, and I want to be upfront with you, I will spend as much time as I can and as much time as I have to in your home to address a problem, but I am not there to be your therapist. And I want to be upfront with you. Because no offense, if I'm spending more time addressing your individual concerns and needs, whose time am I not spending, or whose attention am I not giving my time to?
Children.
That child. So the fact of the matter is, and I want you all to write this down, and then I'm going to ask some general questions to everybody. I want you to write down the word social or socially. Okay? Socially. Second word that I want you to write down, medically or medical. Education. A third word. A fourth word, behavioral. Fifth word, physical. Sixth word, developmental. And the last and final one, psychiatric or psychological. Okay? So, do me a favor. Mr. and Mrs. Burks, reread to me what I had you guys write down.
1, social. 2, medical. 3, education. 4, behavioral. 5, psycho. 6, developmental. And, well, I'm sorry, 5 was physical, 6 was developmental, and 7 was psychological.
Psychological. Okay, and one more, emotional. Okay? Now, the reason that I had you write down all of those words is because of this. Those are the typical areas that a social worker is going to ask you questions about. We are going to want to know about how that child is doing psychologically. We are going to want to know how that child is doing emotionally. We are going to want to know how that child is doing behaviorally. We are going to want to know how that child is doing medically. These 8 different words are the different areas that most social workers are typically going to ask you questions about. And did I write educate? I did have you write educational. Okay. Those are the different areas of development and or growth that we tend to assess how a child is doing. Because if I, as a social worker, can get a well-rounded picture in those different areas, then I have a good idea about how that child is doing over time. So do not be surprised when a social worker is asking you questions and re-asking you these same questions, because that's what we do. We ask the same question 10 different times to try to see, is there a consistent pattern? Don't be offended. Don't turn around and tell me, you ain't listening to me. Yes, I am. Because what is important for us is to hear a consistent story and pattern about how that child is actually doing in your care. When I interview a child, I am typically looking at those same general points, those same areas. Because my job as a social worker is not just to pick up on the verbal cues that a child has given me or that a resource parent has given me. My job is to also figure out those indirect cues that you are giving me so that I can get a good, well-rounded picture about how that child is doing. So now I want to ask all of you, what were some of your observations about my interaction with Miss Griggs? Correct? Griggs. Say it again. Griggs. I messed it all up. All right. What was your guys' interactions? What did you guys see when you saw me asking her questions? Question.
That kind of questions is because you like to know how the child is doing, mental, physical, and trying to help the child. Because the more important is the child, not the people take care of the child. You and the person taking care of the child is like needs to be together to help the child.
The reality, absolutely. And the reality is that I should be asking pointed questions. Okay, if I'm just coming out to your home and saying, hey, how's everybody going? I'm wasting your time, I'm wasting that child's time, and I'm not doing my job. Because the reality is that I have a job to do just like you. What were some of your other observations?
That you like to know that both is in the same page to help the child.
By all means, I want to be on the same page. I want to be on the same page as you, but I also want to know when I interview you separate from the child, I want to also see where there's consistency, because make no mistake about it, a social worker will ask to speak to the child separately from you. We will ask to speak to a child somewhere private, in their bedroom, outside, somewhere where we may ask you to leave. And if we're talking to a child in their bedroom and we suddenly hear sweeping going on right outside the door, some social workers are going to tell you, I see you, and we're going to let you know. Because here's the thing, that happens a lot when there's conflict. Suddenly, I am talking to the child, and then all of a sudden, what do I hear? Hey, wait, no, you need to tell him the truth. Trust me. I'll pick up when the child is lying. I don't need a play-by-play. Because at the end of the day, if I'm doing my job well, I'm also going to give you that respect to talk to you privately as well. So even though that child may be telling me a lie, don't feel the need to defend yourself on each and every point. Because no offense, here's where that becomes a problem. Who looks worse? The child who's lying to me, or the foster parent, resource parent, who wants to make it clear the child is lying to me? Who looks worse? Because you're the adult. And you have to trust me that in doing my job, I've dealt with kids that will lie. Now, no offense. Make no mistake about it. There are some social workers who will also get caught up into believing the things that a child says. And there are some social workers who will very much be enmeshed with the child so that they listen to every little thing that the child says and does not want to interact with you. My advice to you on that is realize and understand every social worker's got a supervisor. And all it takes is a cordial, professional call to say, I'd like to talk to a supervisor about a concern that I have. Does everybody understand that? You don't need to immediately attack that social worker or that supervisor. You need to understand you have a job to do. And your job is to still be a professional even when you are upset. Because no offense, the hardest person to control when they are upset is you. We deal with it all the time for kids. A kid won't like you, and they'll tell me everything about it. Trust me, I'll figure that out. But at the same time, you're the adult. You're the professional. You're the person that I'm entrusting to take care of this child, and you're the person that I'm entrusting to ultimately continue to help this child. So it's important that you understand that not every kid will like you or like your help. That's okay. Because no offense, my own kids didn't like everything I did. But at the end of the day, they still respected me. And that's what you're ultimately working on. What were some other observations that you guys noticed with my interaction with Miss Griggs? All right. What were other observations?
It seemed like you were trying to see if there were any resources that you might need, whether it be a psychiatrist or go down to school and talk to some people down there. It seemed like you were fishing around for that.
By all means, part of the job of a social worker is to assess, is there a given need? Is there something that is missing that maybe the social worker can help? Or is there something that the resource parent has acknowledged that makes me say, wow, you know what? I can trust what they're doing for this child because they have a good impression about what's going on. What did you notice about the manner in which I spoke to Miss Griggs?
Demeanor was well.
Demeanor, was it appropriate?
Very professional.
Was it respectful?
Professional.
Professional. Thank you very much. I like that word. In theory, that's how it should be. I shouldn't be coming in as a social worker into your home with an attitude. If it is, if I do, don't play into it. Don't play into it. It will be the hardest thing for you not to do. Somebody is coming at you with an attitude, that will be hard not to charge back. Just tell them, hey, you know what? You seem a little tense today. Would you like some water? How's your day going? Kill them with kindness. Because at the end of the day, no offense, we're all human beings. And no offense, it is tiresome. It is challenging to have to deal with a child who is upset and giving you a lot of hassle. Yes or no? Okay. Well, guess what? As a social worker, we sometimes have to go into a home and we have to see things that we can't get out of our heads. I used to work for Child Protective Services for Riverside County. There were some times when I'd come home and the first thing I want to do is just hold on and hug my kids. So realize and understand that, yes, that social worker may be having a bad day and may be taking it out on you. And if you kill me with kindness, eventually I'm going to pick up on that. I'm going to either think, man, why is this person so fake? Or I'm going to think, you know what, maybe I need to check myself.
You like coffee?
I do. Hazelnut. All right? At the same time, realize and understand, my interaction with you, yes, should be professional, should be appropriate. At the same time, what do you think I was doing to Miss Griggs? Correct? All right. What do you think I was doing to her?
Study.
By all means, I was studying everything about her. I was listening to all the things that were coming out of her mouth. I was trying to figure out, is she just trying to paint a pretty picture for me? I'm also watching her demeanor. I'm watching her mannerisms. I'm also wondering, trying to figure out, man, is she a resource parent who really has resources available to employ for whatever problems? And does she have a true understanding of the child in her care? That's important to me. Because at the end of the day, who am I trusting to take care of that child? You. And I want to know that you have an understanding of that child so that you're not overreacting to the things that that child is doing. What did I try to do when I talked about visitations? Question or comment?
Try to do the necessities the child has covered in any single aspect.
Okay. Anything else? I tried to prepare her. I wanted to give her a heads up that guess what? We're about to initiate visitations. And when visitations start, everything can potentially change. Raise your hand if in this room right now you are currently a resource parent with a coming of age foster family agency. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4 families, 5 families. Have any of you 5 that have raised your hands ever experienced where the minute you have visitations, suddenly things change? Little David isn't so cute anymore. Well, realize and understand. My job is to prepare you to know that just because things are going great right now, they may change. And my hope is that you don't personalize it so that when that change happens, you turn around and say, this child has to be removed. Because is that fair to that child? I don't mean to be rude, but I want to be honest. If I were the biological parent of a child in foster care, and you happen to be that child's resource parent, you would hate me. You would hate me. Because one of the things that I would try to do is challenge you to see, are you going to get mad at me easily? Because if you are, how are you treating my child when there's no adults around? And so, no offense, when I see my child for a visit, I'm going to look at my child and go, I don't like the way their hair is done. I'm going to look at my child and say, why aren't they dressed in better looking clothes? And I don't want you to tell me, well, they're the clothes you gave the child. I don't want to hear that. You have to understand that as visitations start, a child suddenly now has anxiety. And because they have anxiety, they don't always know how to express it. Because what is that child? A child. And my job as a social worker is to help prepare you that there is the possibility that this child may begin to change and may begin to act out. And understand, that's possible. Don't react. Work with your social worker, communicate with your child, and we'll get through it. Any other final observations that you guys noticed or could see in our interaction?
You were straight to the point with pretty much trying to cover everything.
By all means, trying to cover everything and at the same time, trying to do what? Get out. Because no offense, I got a job to do. And today I may have a plan to meet with you today, then turn around and go where? To that child's school, and then try to go see 2 or 3 other kids. So what I'm trying to do is get everything that I need to get and get out of your house. Not because I don't want to be there, but because I want to do my job. So some people may interpret that as, well, man, why is this social worker so quick to want to get out? They don't want to sit down. They're only focusing in on their needs. Trust me, every social worker has a different approach. But at the end of the day, every social worker is trying to do what they can to help that child first and foremost, and along the way, maintain the positive relationship with you and that child. Now, I want to clarify one issue real quick. the difference between an agency social worker working with you or a county social worker. Those individuals that are becoming a resource parent or a resource family through a foster family agency will actually have 2 social workers that they interact with. One social worker will be a social worker who is employed by the agency that represents you. In all of your cases, that agency social worker will be referred to as a agency social worker employed by a coming of age foster family agency. Your agency social worker will interact with you on a weekly basis. Your agency social worker will typically, in the course of those interactions, every week, typically have those interactions occur at your home. Not always, but mostly they should be coming to your home and interacting with you on a weekly basis and that child in your home. Why do I want to come to your home? What's that? Observation. I also want to get to know the layout of how the child interacts in the home. I also want to have the ability to say, I know where the child sleeps, what their needs are, how many clothes they have. But at the same time, I also want to be able to, if there is an allegation made against you, I want to be able to say, no, I've been in the house and this is what I know. So your agency social worker works for the same organization that you are working with. At the same time, every child in foster care will also have a county social worker. There are some resource parents or resource families who elect to become a resource parent directly by the county. And in those cases, they will not have an agency social worker. They will only have a county social worker. The county social worker will interact with that child monthly, once a month. Does that always occur at your house? No. It might occur at their office. It may occur at a visit. It may occur at a counseling appointment or at a special meeting called a child and family team meeting. It may occur anywhere and everywhere because the mandate of the county is that that county social worker see their child at least once a month, but it does not require them to see the child in your home. And in fact, there may be occasions when that county social worker does not maintain face-to-face contact with you. That is okay. Because who will be interacting with you weekly? Your agency social worker. Does everybody understand that differentiation? Okay? Final thing that I want to point out with regards to the interaction. Realize and understand that yes, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Yes, I'm going to hope that you're able to give me good feedback. At the same time, do me a favor. Do not try to impress your social worker. Worst mistake you can ever make. I am not trying to be impressed by you telling me everything that I want to hear in what you assume I want to hear. What I truly want is to know that the child is doing well in your home, that the child's needs are being met. If there is something that is not being met, that I either look to provide it, you look to provide it, or we work with other community partners to provide and meet that need. At the same time, I personally do not want to spend too much time having to compliment you. If you need compliments, if you need to be patted on the back, find a different significant other who can meet those needs, because it's not me. That is what your husband or your wife is supposed to do. I am not there to do that. Does everybody understand that? Because at the end of the day, who are you and I, or who should you and I truly be focused in on? The child. And if you're doing that, and I see that, and I know that, and I feel it here, I know it here, and I can hear it from that child, guess what? That's how you impress me. Because what that tells me is you're doing your job. And no offense, you're not going to receive extra kudos for doing your job. But you are going to receive praise from that child, because at the end of the day, that child will show to you in their own way the compassion and concern that they have about you. First and foremost, by not acting out in your home. Does everybody understand? This is the role of the agency social worker. This is the role typically of most county social workers. They do want to help. But you have to understand they are not focused in on helping you. They want to see that things are going well, but their number one focus is that child. Make no mistake about it. Does everybody understand? Does anybody have any questions about the relationship or role of the agency social worker or county social worker for that matter? Any questions at all? Okay. So, with that being said, I am now going to ask you one question, and I am going to have you write the question down, or the answer down. And the question that I want to ask you is, in your own way, how do you show the social worker that you're interacting and working with that you are doing your job? How do you do that? Okay, so you said by the report card, a happy child, a well-adjusted child. Okay? Anybody else?
Yesterday, you teach we need to have every single information, documentation, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, medications, everything we do for the little child is to prove to you when documentation.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the child how he reacts.
So you're saying by having all the pertinent information documented for that child, you can present that to the social worker, and that's another way of showing how you're doing for that, or how you're taking care of that child. Okay? You raised your hand.
Oh, just doing your due diligence.
Okay? Doing your due diligence. Explain that a little bit.
Okay, by showing the notes you have written,
Okay?
showing the kid has his proper clothing on the closet, his food, his doctor appointments, by having the child well behaved, and what you have done to support the child
Okay.
with evidence.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? Here and then in the back.
Well, by keeping up the pertinent information, like me and my wife was mentioning, by upholding our responsibilities as providers for the child,
Mm-hmm.
by listening to the child, taking care of the child, and that's about it.
Very good. Very good. What was the question that I asked you?
How are we going to show the social worker we are doing our job,
Okay.
you know, with the child? I think
Hold on, let me say the question aloud. How do you show the social worker that you are doing your job? Right? Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. You want to know what I look for? First thing I look for you to prove to me that you truly care about a child and that you truly are doing right by that child. First thing, a never give up attitude, a commitment. This child was placed in my home for a reason, and guess what? We aren't even going to consider 7-day notice or removing this child. I'm going to work with this child no matter what. I love that. Because when a person looks at making a commitment to that child. What that says to me is that they are looking for the long-term stability of that child. Secondly, in addition to that commitment, treating that child just like you would your own. You have a job to do. Documentation, communication, doing all of the responsibilities that you are required to as a foster parent or a resource family. But truly, treating that child just like they are your own, doing exactly for that child, no different than what you do for your own, including a little bit more, and recognizing that that child needs you. That's what I look for. When I have a foster parent or a resource family or a resource parent who truly makes a commitment to the child, doesn't look at a 7-day notice, treats that child just like they are a natural member of their own family, does their job, and that child speaks highly of you, I am most impressed. I am most impressed. Because what I now know is that that child doesn't have a resource family backing them. They have a second family backing them. That's the commitment that I hope you all have and make to a child in your care. That's when words speak volumes. I don't need to hear any other things because I can come into a home and I can see that this child is a part of your family, sees him or herself as a part of your family, is treated no different. Doesn't matter if they look different or not. Doesn't matter if there's something wrong physically, medically, behaviorally. That child doesn't see it, and neither do you. That's what impresses me, and that's what I look for in foster families. Does everybody understand that? Yes, you have a job to do, but make no mistake about it. What we're looking for is raising healthy families. And although you may not be the biological family or the biological parents of this child, what I'm looking for is that family that is raising this child no different than any other member of their family. When you do that, you fully have my respect, because that means you're committed and you're not looking at this child as anything else but a member of your family until they go on or a more permanent outcome is developed. Does everybody understand that? That's your task. And that's what I hope to help develop in your household. Because I'm not looking for a pat on the back. The question is are you? Does everybody understand?
Yes.
Any questions about anything we've said up until now? Not that one. Okay.
Pretty much covered.
Okay. So then let's go ahead and do this. We are going to go ahead and take a break. We are going to go ahead and take about a 20-minute break, at which point in time we will come back and wrap this up. Okay, we are going to go ahead and start talking a little bit about separation anxiety. So one of the things that I want to point out is everybody has a PowerPoint presentation slide, is that correct? I am going to be reading off of the slide rather than constantly moving that back and forth. So that's why I want you guys to all have the slide, and then I'm going to talk about some information in the slide. It's important to understand that separation anxiety in children is real. It is something that as a resource family you will deal with, and it is a problem that you likely will experience at some point in time with the kids that you interact with. As you can see, separation anxiety typically affects younger children more than our older kids. And so what we're gonna do for today is we're gonna talk about separation anxiety as it affects children typically under the age of 5 or up to the age of 5. First and foremost, separation anxiety is a normal part of a child's development. Realize and understand, how many of us have kids? Okay? How many of us that have kids love our kids? Everybody please raise your hand. Otherwise, I have to call Child Protective Services on all of you. All right? We love our kids. We think our kids are the most beautiful creatures in the world. However, if I were to take your child and I were to move your child and remove that child from your care, put that child into a stranger's home, not talk to your child about when they were actually going to go back to your care, would your child be the same child?
No.
Would your child miss you?
Yes.
Would your child start to react negatively because they miss you?
Yes.
Would your child, as beautiful as they may be, become a different child to that person who is now taking care of your child? This is what we have to understand goes on in the minds of a child in foster care. This is also what we have to understand that goes on in the young minds of young children who do not understand everything that is going on, but simply recognize that something is wrong. And as a result, you have to realize and be prepared for a child having a behavioral episode when they come to your care. Because although you come in with open arms, a smile as big as Texas, and a willingness to try to help that child, what are you to that child? Say that again? A stranger. Yes, you might be called a resource parent. Yes, somebody may have told that child that they're gonna go live with you, a foster parent or a resource family or whatever terminology they wanna give. But to that child, you are strictly a stranger. And that is going to cause that child to have some reactions. So realize and understand that when we look at how anxiety develops or how separation anxiety develops, we must first understand that separation anxiety varies amongst each child. No two children are going to show the level of anxiety and tension that they have the same. And as a result, for one child, it may be they immediately want to run as soon as they are given an opportunity to get out of that car. They want to run in any direction other than your home. To another child, it may be that they immediately break down and are crying and screaming. To a third child, it may be that they will not let go of their social worker's hand. And the unfortunate thing is that is going to cause an emotional reaction in you because you're a parent. And the sad but honest truth is you have to understand and not be one to say, okay, come on, we gotta go. You gotta understand and recognize that this child is processing this anxiety in his or her own way. At the same time, Separation anxiety may end when toddlers begin to understand that although the parents may be out of their sight, they are not gone forever. But not every kid initially understands that. All they know is somebody named a social worker came to their home and took them from the care and custody of their parents. And until that child begins to understand that although they aren't seeing their mom or their dad or their grandma right now, that does not mean they're gone forever. But that takes time for that child to understand that. And as a result, some children will undergo a certain degree of anxiety when they are placed in an unfamiliar setting. And that is where you have to recognize and be able to support that child in their time of need. Separation anxiety is something that most foster parents, especially those foster parents that take care of younger children, will experience. And the degree at which you will experience it depends on each individual child that you interact with. Situations that can trigger stress and anxiety for young children include a new child care setting, a new brother or sister, moving to a new home, witnessing some type of tension at home, be it arguments, divorce, death, serious illnesses amongst family members, having a parent leave to go off to the military. An extremely scary event that causes that a child experiences personally, such as a nightmare or a bad storm. Or a child who is naturally shy and may experience anxiety more than other children. To a child who's been placed in foster care, what is one big disruption in their life that has just happened when they are placed in your home? What's the one big disruption that just occurred? One, they got placed in a stranger's home. Two, they also got moved to a new environment. In some cases, that child is placed with a family who does not look anything like them. So there becomes a cultural element.
They could have been separated from their siblings.
They're also, in many cases, especially in large sibling groups, separated from not only their parents and family, but also their siblings. So as a result, that child just experienced multiple means of anxiety. Because now that child who might have been parentified and was the protector of my younger sister is now separated from my younger sister. So realize and understand the placement of a child in a foster home or in the home of a resource family has totally just disrupted their life. And that in and of itself, let alone the fact of why they were removed in the first place, the abuse, the neglect, whatever, that just compounded the problem for that child. And they have yet to even have time to grieve. At different ages, anxiety develops in different ways. And so, within the first few months, babies, we all love them. They can pretty much be soothed by anybody. Hold them, rock them, feed them, touch them. And babies typically can be taken care of. And so, as a result, babies can usually be calmed by any loving person, regardless of his or her relationship. However, a baby who has been or who was born with a positive toxicology for drugs, who is going through withdrawals, is also going to be dealing with anxiety. And you need to understand that. And as a result, When we're dealing with children or babies or infants that have been born with a positive toxicology, it is going to take a little bit more nurturing and commitment to help that child deal with the anxiety that those drugs are creating in their system. Children 7 to 14 months, by about 7 months, babies recognize that there is only one mom or dad. But they do not understand when they will come back. And as a result, this phase is oftentimes referred to as stranger anxiety or stranger danger. And as a result, this is where our younger kids start to become fearful about those who are unfamiliar to them. And so realize and understand that unfortunately this phase generally peaks before 18 months, but for you as a caregiver, this is where a child is also very clingy and oftentimes has a hard adjustment leaving your sight because unfortunately they already know that their own parents have left them and they don't know when they're coming back. Within toddler and preschool years, children can become anxious and emotional when a parent or primary caregiver leaves, but they can be distracted by activities with the caregiver or other children. And so a lot of times with children who are toddlers or in their preschool years, what we end up seeing is, especially amongst foster parents, we oftentimes see the child oftentimes react whereby they will cry and scream out if you are about to leave them somewhere. And so be aware and understand that for children in this age range, when you are interacting with them, you are oftentimes having to constantly reassure them that you will be back. Because within this age range, what that child does remember is when their mom left and didn't come back. Because this is the age range where children are very impressionable and are learning a lot. By age 5, most children are secure enough to be dropped off, for example, at a child care center or school without much distress. However, separation anxiety may be diagnosed as a disorder if symptoms persist longer than 4 weeks in a child older than age 5. So when we were talking earlier about how the social worker interacts with you, one of the things that a social worker is going to assess is your level of bonding that the child is developing with you. Because what they are trying to assess, that social worker is trying to assess, is the attachment that's being developed or the lack thereof. Because a lack of attachment can also be problematic for you, but for that child who is also still learning. And so as a result, one of the things that a social worker wants to see is a foster parent or a resource family that is very involved and doing a lot of social things with children in this age range. Because one way that we help develop a true bond with this child is by doing things outside of the home, not just inside of the home. When feeling anxious about separation, young children may display different behaviors. As acknowledged in the PowerPoint presentation, there can be crying or whining. There can be clinginess. There can be shyness. There can also be silence or an unwillingness to interact with other individuals, even when they're familiar people. So, a challenge to you. How many of you guys are a two-parent household? By show of hands. Realize and understand that one parent doesn't always have to do all the work. This is where you learn to work as a team. If a child is having a problem with one parent, the second parent needs to step in and ensure that that second parent is also trying to help develop that rapport and relationship so that that child does not develop that anxiety. There are different types of anxiety disorders. Most children outgrow separation anxiety by about age 5. However, some children do continue to experience a continued reoccurrence of separation anxiety into their early school years. About 1 in every 25 children experiences separation anxiety disorder. So the reality is, it is common. And sorry to say, there are going to be many of you in this room that, if approved as a resource family, will be dealing with that, or will be dealing with some type of an anxiety disorder that children develop. There are different types of anxiety disorders. For example, there's generalized anxiety disorder, separation anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder. And yes, kids in foster care do experience PTSD. Okay? That is not something that just adults experience. Kids in foster care do experience PTSD. There are some symptoms to look for. There are some red flags. I would encourage you in your PowerPoint presentation to definitely highlight these, because these are the things that you want to be aware of. So the following are symptoms of a problem, such as nightmares about harm, danger, death, or separation. I had a child placed in a home. Within their first 4 nights, foster parent kept coming back to me and she was saying, "David, this kid talks about Ouija boards and voodoo and all kinds of things." And she was real concerned and scared about what this child was imagining. He was 6 years of age. Now, 6 years of age, seeing and talking about Ouija boards and things like that, I'd say that that kid's either watched too many cartoons, too many scary movies, or he's definitely been introduced to some weird things. But again, he concerned the foster parent, big time. Because that was something she hadn't experienced, and that was something that he, at night, would constantly have nightmares about. Excessive distress during routine separations from the parent or other family members is another red flag. Repeated physical complaints such as constant headaches or stomach aches, as well as panic if the parents or other family member is late to pick them up from different appointments, such as school. Consistency is also critical for you as a resource family. Developing a consistent routine helps to establish trust and rapport with this child and helps to eliminate some of that anxiety from developing and continuing to expand. So realize and understand, if you tell a child you are going to pick them up at a specific time, be there. Don't make promises that you are not following through with. At the same time, a reluctance to go to sleep without a significant adult nearby, that's a red flag. Reoccurrence or a reluctance to go to school or other places because of fear of separation, as well as the inability to attend birthday parties or field trips independently because that child does not want to be out of your sight. Kids are social kids. And it becomes red flags whenever a child gets to do something fun and they don't want to do it. And that's where you need to make sure that your social worker is aware and that you are documenting those things. Because we talked about yesterday some of the documentation standards that you are required to maintain and keep. In general, when anxiety is inappropriate or excessive, interferes with normal activities, or lasts for weeks rather than days, it is a good idea to make sure that you are communicating those experiences and feelings to your social workers so that appropriate therapeutic services can be put into play. At the same time, remember, a resource parent always has resources available that they can employ immediately while they get additional resources provided to them. So do not hesitate. If you know a local counseling center that accepts Medi-Cal, and you're experiencing that a child is going through certain things, make a referral, communicate that with your social worker, and get that child the assistance and help that they need. Treatment to address anxiety disorders, especially separation anxiety, oftentimes focuses in on addressing the physical symptoms, but it also is focused in on identifying what the anxious thoughts or behaviors are about. It also incorporates helping the child understand that the parent will return. How do we, as resource parents, help a child to understand that just because they are separated from their biological parents today does not mean that it is forever? How do we help that child understand that?
Communicate it, with the child.
Communicating it with the child. What else?
Pictures help.
By all means, establishing and during visits, having pictures or having that child take pictures with their family so that they have memories to hold on to. What else?
Keep the child updated.
Wait, I'm sorry, I saw your hand in the back and then I'll come up here.
Make the child, like, do a present for the parents.
By all means,
Appreciate every time. Speak good about the parents. For the guy or the girl. Father sometimes is not perfect. Your father's not.
so not condemning a parent in front of a child, making sure that a child is able to create or make something for their parents to give to their parents. Very good.
Just keep the child updated on what's going on.
Make sure that the child understands what's going on and talk to the child about what is going on. One of the ultimate ways that we can also help a child understand that their parents are not gone forever is to be there for visits and make sure that that child is on time for visits. You might think that a visit started at 3 o'clock and you got there at 3:05 and that is okay because you were just 5 minutes late. That is not okay. That is not okay. And no matter what excuse you may have, no offense, you created a sense of 5 minutes of panic in that child when you did not get that child on time to that visit. Yes, biological parents will sometimes be late. Yes, they will sometimes not show. And you always need to have a backup plan in case a visit does not go well. You need to plan to do something fun immediately after a visit occurs so that if that visit does not go well, you immediately know to instill plan B to make sure that that child has a fun memory to think about rather than the fact that that visit didn't go well. A resource parent is prepared for the negatives that may happen and is ready to ensure that that child does not sit in that misery. But be there on time. At the same time, to establish a plan for separation and reunion, and that is through the courts with a case plan that the parents have to follow. The thing I want you guys to understand about a child being separated from their parents, it causes anxiety. And yes, some of us have a ultimate commitment of permanency for a child by saying we might even step up and become an adoptive parent for that child. And bless you for that. We love to see that. But the number one goal, first and foremost, is to still give that parent an opportunity to get their child back. And that's what we need to be prepared to support. Because even if we want to adopt a child, the right one will come along. But let's make sure that before that right one comes along, we've helped all the kids that come through our care. Does everybody understand? Any questions on anything I've talked about up until now? With that being said, I want to thank you guys for coming to today's class. I appreciate the fact that you listened to everything that I had to say. Next week, we are going to test you after class because we are going to start doing some things on our cell phones in which you are going to be tested and you will be able to see your scores in comparison to your peers online. All right? Thank you guys. You have a good day, and I'll talk to you guys later.